And now let's get into the most sad book that I've read in a very long time. Shark Heart.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today's episode will be reviewing, analyzing, discussing Shark Heart by Emily Habeck. Right now, Mariah and I are not currently fundraising for any local mutual aid groups. But if you are a part of any mutual aid organizations or know of any mutual aid organizations that need any type of shout out fundraising, please DM us, comment below, message us, and we will look into it to adding it to an intro for a month or two, just to shout out, just to get more eyes and ears on those types of things. So feel free to reach out if you ever need anything like that. And if you want more content outside of the podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Twitter or Instagram. All of it's at Literary Liberation or LitLib Podcasts. Or LitLib Pod, I think, for Twitter. But everything else should be under Literary Liberation. I'm your co-host, Kristen. You can find me at KRXXTXN on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host, Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms. Because I saw a commenter say, "Who's Mariah? I'm he. I'm him. I'm Himothy."
They commented that
And
like 5 episodes
that was a
ago.
couple weeks. I've been thinking about that. And they're like, "Who's Mariah?" I was like,
I put the little
That's a good question.
in the editing. I make sure to put our names underneath, like at the beginning
That was
too.
just like the
So
weirdest thing. I think about it often. Just like, what do you mean?
I can't handle that. I'm more famous than her.
I'm just the other person on the screen.
They know that I'm doing all the work for the podcast. That's what I say whenever it's time to edit. Who's Mariah?
Craigbot, OBS.
Editing.
That's all Kristen.
Thumbnail. Title.
I make the Spotify cover.
That's like one post.
Hey, I'm working on it. I have been looking for a copy of spoiler. I don't think this is spoiler of Blood Over Brighthaven for our book club. The second time I've gone out to the bookstores looking for one, I'm gonna have to order one online because
Really?
I was gonna post a cutesy little book. Yeah, they don't have it at Barnes, and I live in Yee Town, so that's all I got. So I have to order it online
I
to get a
did
copy
buy
so
it
I can post
kind of.
those.
I did buy it kind of before
Bookstagram.
the hype too, because I bought it in. I don't know. I bought it months ago because I was like, "Oh, this is on my TBR, and I've heard good things about it." And like, I think I got it after Christmas because I got like $100 gift card to a bookstore. So then I was
Yeah.
like,
So I think I was hoping
anything.
that I could find it, but I couldn't. So if you want to read along with us, check out our book club over on Fable. It's Lit Lib Pod. That's what we're gonna be reading up until the very end of next month because we had some extra
This
days, so we
month.
picked something a
This
little bit
month. It's
longer.
when
This
this
month,
goes
it's
up.
May.
This is
Sorry.
May, I believe. Or no, is it
It's April 27th.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be like it's gonna be May.
Yeah.
It's like May 1st or something. May 3rd maybe.
May 1st. This is going up. So this month you have until the end of May to read Blood Over Brighthaven with us. Not next month. Jesus Christ, my boobs are gonna be falling out.
Sorry.
Anyways, moving on.
Today, completely different genre of book, Shark Heart by Emily Habeck.
Habeck.
Now, this book I didn't realize got published August 8th of 2023, so it's a fairly new book. It hasn't even been out for a whole year.
Yes,
No,
it
that's a
has.
lie. That's 2025. I don't know.
It's been out for a little bit
my
over
years.
a year and a half.
Okay, a little bit over a year and a half.
Almost
Sorry.
2 years, I guess. It's
I'm
April.
living in 2024.
Yeah. Well, because I guess we can discuss how we found this book too, because I don't necessarily think this is like a book talk book, even though there are like a decent number of reviews on Goodreads, right? 68K.
A decent amount of reviews on, but I have not seen anyone on Book Talk about it, and I'm a little worried because last time we did one of these books, Nobody listened to it, and I hope maybe
This is your
at
sign
least
to
this
go
isn't
listen to
spoiler
Notes
free.
on an Execution, because this is in the
Rest
same
in peace,
vein.
that episode.
But again, those of you that regularly listen to the podcast know that I am a frequenter on BookTube. I watch quite a couple different BookTubers, but my favorite, which I've clearly stated multiple times, is Newly Nova, because that is somebody that if if she's rating a book 5 stars, I'm rating a book 5 stars. Like, I've never had someone that's had a book taste that's so in sync with mine typically. So I like to follow all of her reviews and recommendations. And I think she said Shark Heart was her favorite book that she read last year. And she also recommended Notes on Execution, which was her number 2 book. And that ended up being one of my favorite books of last year. So I was like, okay, if this is her favorite book of last year, that I'm sure it'll probably be a contender for me to really enjoy it. And Newly Nova does strike again, because this is another great book recommendation. And even Mariah liked it, and Mariah did also like Notes on an Execution as well. So,
Yes, this is a book. If you don't know what Shark Heart is about, which you should go in, I think, with as little information as possible, but is a
mhm.
story that uses magical realism to explore like grief, love, and relationship. And basically, like this couple gets together, and one of them is slowly turning into a shark. So that's all you need to know going
Yeah.
into this, in my opinion. No, it is very heavy
Check
because of
trigger
the
warnings,
themes. Well,
probably.
they're I don't remember reading trigger warnings
There's no
on.
trigger warning page on the book.
Okay, I was like, because I had the e-copy, Kristen had a physical copy, which I do think getting a physical copy of this book will have the biggest payoff for, because it's different. It's a
It's
different style of writing.
it is formatted not as a typical novel, because like you have some. This is like one of the most unique books I've ever read. But
For
like,
people who are not watching right now, it has screenwrites, like a script, like a
yeah,
play at times.
and
It has pages that will have a
just like
couple of
one paragraph.
paragraphs. It almost reminds me of Ellen Hopkins in some ways with the way that it was structured, but it's very non-traditional, which I thought was quite fun, and it makes it read very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm happy because I don't think you want to spend. It's not like A Little Life where it's like 700 pages of trauma allegedly. I haven't
No,
read
it's
it,
just
but this was
400 pages of
very quick.
trauma. But it's 400 pages of trauma, but you have to remember, like, most of the time you're not reading a full page for most of these. I think that's the only reason why it's so long, is because, like, there are multiple times where the only thing you're reading on a page is, like, maybe a whole paragraph. Or sometimes it'll just be, like, characters' dialogue for a whole page as well, too. So, it's really not that long of a book, even though it sounds kind of intimidating being 400 pages. It does not feel like 400 pages at all. Like, you could
Not at
read
all.
this in like, I think I ended up reading this in, like, 3 sittings total, 3 or 4. But that's only
It
because,
was
like,
about the
I was
same.
spacing it out
And it wasn't even
intentionally.
very long spacings, like, this
No.
was, like, maybe 30 minutes to, like, 40 minutes. Like, you could do it really quick. I think a couple times I did an hour, so
Mhm.
less than 3 or 4 hours total to read 400 pages, so keep that in mind. That's, like, the way it's set up. It reads very quickly. It's just nice. It was a very nice read
Very
visually and the
unique.
storytelling. I liked it. This is Emily Habeck's very Habeck. I wanna add an R, I don't know why, debut novel. She
Yes.
has a BFA in theater from Southern Methodist University Meadows School of Arts and a master's degree from Vanderbilt Divinity School, and somebody else. So Vanderbilt Peabody College. I don't know if those are two different things. I don't know a lot about colleges because I dropped out. So
Same, so but I think reading this too, this is definitely, I think if you were a theater kid in, like, high school or college, you will also end up really enjoying this book too, because you can kind of tell that, like, Emily Habeck has, like, some background within theater with the way that it's written, and one of the main characters is, like, a teacher for high school theater, and you can very much, like, I could, like, relive my theater experiences, like, somewhat in some of the scenes, because it felt very much like my memory. So it does feel very accurate in that way too, which is nice, instead of just being like, these kids are in theater and they put on the best production ever. The summer musical is done, sort of thing.
And I also think if you're somebody that doesn't or was not in theater, which I wasn't. I went to a theater college or university,
Well, you
but
didn't take any theater
I
classes.
no, it was just a really relevant thing. Like people doing stuff like my high school, it was very relevant. So it gave me a different appreciation for people who do these to do that. Cause I just remember like there's a very negative trope. I don't know if it was when you were in school, but when I was in school, like theater kids were the weird kids, which is fine. To be weird is to go
Um,
against social norms, but it was like Doctor Who and Naruto running, like very odd
See, that was like
demographic of
the
kids when I was in high
band
school.
orchestra kids, I feel like, but I feel like theater, and while it wasn't necessarily popular, it wasn't either it was I feel like it wasn't like a lot of kids that were in theater were actually like not like I don't know. I don't really think of like popularity as like anything my school really had because like although we were a large school, I feel like my class specifically was like a very almost like tight knit. Like you kind of knew everybody too, like because you would have overlapping classes with a lot of people, so you it was like there's very few like I don't know. I didn't really see it as like a popularity thing personally, but like I was in theater and I didn't necessarily like some of my friends were in theater, but it wasn't also like I was friends with everybody
I
in theater
also
either.
live in like rural, like, Oregon, so it's
Yeah.
like we have 2 high schools. It was very much different. I imagine, like, living in a big city, being able to, like, go and do these things, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Just that was a very side no, I was just thinking about that. I was like, "Oh, like, theater" it was nice a
I
positive representation, I suppose, of, like, the
yeah.
way it is and, like, what a theater teacher
I
was like. I didn't take
think
any theater classes because I had, like, stage fright. That was not
yeah.
the thing that I was
I think it's a lot of like I think it's just like a stereotype kind of thing too that like oh like these people are theater kids where it's like yes people are theater kids but like you have to understand that like most actors and like people that are doing like actual like productions like on Broadway and stuff like that like they're theater kids too so like the trope of like that you're making fun of it is like so funny because it's like you're also making fun of like these celebrities that like people idolize and worship because we have like the whole celebrity culture and stuff like that so I just think it's really funny that like if people are like making fun of theater kids it's like you don't really talk to any theater kids then I don't think but I mean like they
Yes,
are
if
as bad as
you're
you say as well like
That's I didn't have that experience going through it, so I was curious. But Kristen and I have held off on all of our thoughts on this,
yeah
but Kristen has that lived experience of being a theater kid, so I know that this book hit a lot differently, I
well
think, in some aspects.
the thing is that like I was a theater kid, but I didn't feel like I was a theater kid, you know? Like, I don't really so I
In
feel like I'm
defense
gonna
of
have
theater
bias.
kid.
I'll probably have a bias towards it, where I'm sure, like, some people were like, "Oh, like, Kristen has such theater kid energy, so of course I'm gonna defend it." But, like, I do know there were some popular people at my school that were in the like, popular what I viewed as, like, popular, where they had, like, multiple friends and they were going out and they were partying and things like that. Like, I didn't do that, but other kids in theater were doing that, so you can't just lump us all in as one thing, I think.
I do
Right.
think we'll probably end up circling back to this when we end up getting into the spoilers of this book, but before we get too far off track, we'll get into the rest of, like, the ratings and
Yeah.
whatnot, and our spoiler free review so we can chug on ahead. This book has an average of 3.97 stars, 68,000 ratings on Goodreads, and 14,000 reviews. It had been nominated for 3 different awards, several in 2023 or
Whenever
2020. Yeah,
2023, whenever it
there's
came
2
out.
for 2023 and then 2 for 2024, but it has not won anything, which I mean, I kinda get it, like, it's a very niche book. I've never read anything quite like it.
No, I do think but I don't necessarily think that, like, some of my favorite books aren't necessarily award winning, and I don't know, like, if there's almost like an elitism surrounding that sort of idea too, especially, like, with sometimes reading certain things, especially like this, where especially the way that awards and stuff are presented for books, it's not like an Oscar or like a Tony or anything like that, you know? Like whenever books get awarded, it's very different, I think. So I don't necessarily I feel like just a nomination is usually like means something of merit is there.
Yeah, so if you're somebody that thinks, like, books need, especially like New York bestseller, you have to sell
Yeah.
like 10,000 copies or something. And I've heard of people like taking out
Buying
loans
their
because
own
they're able
books,
to like
yeah.
buy their own books. It's very silly, but that it's just all I was able to find on this because there isn't a whole lot online about it. Not a lot online about the author and her politics. I didn't see any controversies. I did try looking it up and it sent me down some rabbit hole of a TikToker with with named Emily HA. So I don't know who
Mm.
Emily Ha is. But that's all I was when you look up
But that Emily's
that's not
canceled.
the same
This
person.
one, Emily's
That
not.
apparently that Emily allegedly is canceled. I don't know nothing of it, but that's all I could find. So, not a lot to go off of for this book.
No.
Um,
Which is
what did I
good.
say? Well,
Sometimes it's
our we
nice.
could go into our ratings personally. I
Yeah.
think I gave it 4.25 stars,
I think I gave
and
it,
Chrissy gave 4.5.
yeah, I gave it
We were very
4.5.
close.
Yeah. Which Mariah's like, that never happens. We never rate books the same. Which
The
is
last
like,
couple of times,
why would
it has
we?
been very close.
I think it's funny because it's like, I like, we always kind of known that we've had similar taste in books to, you know what I'm saying? You're just more willing to overlook, I think, flaws more than I am typically for some books.
Depending on what they are, I think I've noticed, like, I think it's fantasy where we diverge pretty significantly, and it's more to do with, like, the politics and the writing style and, like, more so how, like, how the politics unfold.
Yeah.
That's I end up, like, DNFing a lot of books. If it's, like, not getting into it and it's boring, I just
Yeah, and I
don't.
prefer a much more slow burn and like build up and like everything like that. So personally, but that's just for
It's
fantasy though. But I
interesting.
think
It's like
typically,
lit fic, so we're on the same wavelength.
yeah, it seems like it.
We
Well,
had very similar approaches aside from, like, the overall takeaway from, like, Bunny. We've read, I guess, Notes on I don't know, that's, like, more of a thriller, I suppose.
but I guess it is
We
lit fic.
read My Year of Rest and
We
Relaxation,
didn't like
Severance
Lean.
recently, Eileen, we didn't
Severance,
we're very
I would not classify as lit fic. I guess it is, but it's almost more science fictiony, I guess, but like really bad science
it's
fiction. I think that's
yeah, it's
why,
teetering a very precarious line, and I think that's the issue is we are able to pick up on some of these things, and we just rate it the same.
yeah.
So, maybe that's what we should do is just rate lit fic.
So we
Literary lit
can be
fic.
on the same page every time. Um,
Um,
But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if I could pray. Like, obviously, I do think there were some flaws in this. I do think this is one of those books that the beginning, unfortunately, is the best thing about it. But I, like, 70 pages in, like, this is one of those books that I feel like you constantly almost have, like, tears in your eyes the whole time while you're reading it. Like, it's literally this, like, I'm not going to cry, but I could be ready to cry at any minute now, sort of thing. And then, like, there's one specific scene, like, within the first part of the book that I was just, like, gone. I couldn't even,
yeah,
yeah,
I
I was,
will
like,
have
bawling.
pictures. I screenshotted. There's lots of pictures of what was happening, but ultimately, I think this book is really good. I work in memory care. I do hospice care. I watch a lot of, like, terminal, like, diseases come along. I take care of people who are dying. That's what I do for work. It's very sad, but that's just, like, what
It's also a
happens
part
when
of
you work
life.
in the aging community, and I do think it paints dying in a very positive way. Dare I say positive? Your body knows how to die, and it's nice seeing something where it seems scary, but it just happens. And
It
it's
does,
interesting to see different perspectives on that throughout this because it's multiple point of view. It's not just first person. You're getting different parts, different characters, which I thought was
mhm.
really nice, and different types of grief that people are going through with different illnesses that they are being affected with. But they're not like one-to-one comparisons.
No,
There's
everyone
similarities,
has
but you can insert
differences,
your
yeah.
own, right? Which I really appreciated.
Which
So
I
I
think
think
this is a good job at showing, like, two sides of almost, like, the same type of thing. Like, if you read the book, then you know that it shows, like, two sides of how, like, this can take over because, like, in the book, it's people, like, that instead of, like, their mind degrading in many ways, it's what happens is their body starts to turn into another animal, and it's not just a random mutation that's happening. to the character in the story. It's like this is a normal occurrence that happens to people within this world. So it feels very natural and it feels very realistic. Where I feel like the problem with other lit fics with magical realism is that they don't feel very natural, and they feel like it's just like one element of the magical realism is either trying to represent too many things at once or not representing anything at all. Versus this does a very good one-to-one comparison.
This reminded me, if you read this book, it came out like at least 10 years ago. It's a Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. It's technically I think it's
Children's?
a children's book,
Yeah.
middle grade, possibly very similar. So if you're looking for a more elevated version of this, like a Monster Calls, you should read Shark Heart. I think you would like it. This is one of those books I would recommend to like kids who are going through hard times. I think it's a really good like way to explore that certain emotions are normal of having.
Mhm.
And the same way, like this is dealing with a different dynamic. It's not like a parent child. It's your intimate partner
Yeah.
or a parent, right? So I thought that was it was a nice segue. So if you like that, you should. If you like this, then you should read that.
Yeah.
One of the need TikTok.
I know, I keep seeing those. I like those recommendations typically though. If it's especially like
um,
TV shows to books. But yeah.
yeah, I do the video game ones, even though because I'm not a hashtag gamer. I don't know. It's interesting.
Okay. If you like Stardew Valley, read the Farmer's Almanac.
No, literally.
Um, I mean, I think the like lower star ratings too. Personally, I don't think they hold a lot of merit from what Mariah's put in our document, sort of
Yeah.
things.
So this is kind of, we're gonna segue into
But
spoilers. So sorry if
read
you
the book.
haven't read it. Maybe tune out, pause it, go read the book, and then come back to whatever the timestamp is.
We'll always be here.
And well, always. So, we're getting into 1-star reviews because I
Yes.
thought they were interesting and I thought they would give us a bit of a jumping off point because of the way that this is like a non-traditional story and it kind of jumps all over the place at times, which I think for some people may not work. I can definitely see that. It's not a linear storyline.
No.
It worked for me.
I
So, and I
thought
know Litfic is like that. It's one of
yeah.
those things like if it works really well, and if it doesn't work for somebody, people hate it. But this individual named Sean really upset me. There's a couple that really upset me. I'm also on prednisone, so a lot of things upset me right now, but these in particular really got to me. And he said, "Okay, buckle up. A real letdown for me. Paper thin characters that are full of contradiction. Does Ren not have enough money to take care of her husband, or has she been saving tons of money from her high-paying job for years?" It's like, did we read the same book?
I think what's interesting too is to call these characters paper thin, which maybe it's because you don't get to see like a lot of their individual personalities in a way, which I'd argue that you do, especially get to see a lot of their personalities, but it's also like their personalities are not the focus in that way. You know, like the focus is on grief and how you experience that and how you cope with that, for one. So I don't really think that. And saying that the characters are full of contradictions especially bothers me because it's like, okay, so that makes them more real or more realistic. Because if you talk to any person in real life or any people that you know, human beings are completely full of contradictions. That's like the entire human experience.
That's literally like what Mao Zedong's on contradiction is all about, you know? But for real, like
Yeah.
it really is like that. There's a lot of contradictions no matter what you do, whether it's the way that you're trying to create political change or how you're navigating your own like life and relationships. It's just going to happen. You say one thing, do something else, or whatever. And when you're in a time of crises, you do things that don't always make sense because you're in a state
Yeah.
of crisis. You're in a state of panic. You're going through the 8 stages of
You're not
grief.
going to be your
Um,
full rational self that's there to think clearly and concisely about the decisions that you make. And I think especially in this book, she Emily Habeck does such a good job at it too, because the way that Ren and Lewis's characters flip whenever it's Lewis finally getting sent off into the it's gonna make me cry thinking about it. The way that they flip, and we're like, I don't know. I feel like this book definitely hits harder too if you have like a loving partner and like someone that you love so much to be with and everything like that. But like, it's not the same as like a familial relationship, you know? So the idea that like whenever you're like living with someone and growing with someone and marrying someone or being with someone for all these years, the way you grow and change is not something that's noticeable to you and you feel the same. Oh my gosh. Cassie.
Title of this episode is I literally cried while filming this.
Um, but like the
You're
idea
not
though,
wrong
like
though,
the
like,
changes
with
that
the
you
way
make, you don't notice them until like you're at that moment and then they realize that they've changed each other for the betterment of themselves and their relationship.
I think what made this book very successful, in my opinion, is that it happens so quickly within their relationship, and to me, that is a really good placeholder for how no matter what time, like, when your time comes, not in, like, a religious sense, but, like, hey, everyone's gonna die at some point.
Yeah.
That's just part of living,
Some
is
people it
dying.
happens to sooner rather than later.
It does, but it will, like, never be enough time. There will
No.
never be enough time to be with your partner. It will always get cut shorter than you ever want. And in
Even
all of my experiences
yeah.
dealing with, like, people dying and seeing their family it's never enough time.
Even if you live to be 90 years old together, you're still always going to wish you had more of that time. And I think this does a really good job at like making you reflect about like how you spend your time with your partner too. Because these are always things that people take advantage of too. And I like that this book kind of like makes you like think about like your own life and your own relationship and the people around you and stuff like that. Because like the things that are annoying to you now that your partner does, but will be something that you miss also, you know?
Yeah.
If
I
that's
think
just someone
the
that you
second
truly
part
love too. If it's somebody that's like always on your damn nerves and maybe you don't actually like them, sort of thing. You know, like this is not saying that you should be
No,
annoyed
but
by your.
this is the story for people that you love in,
Mhm.
like, the bell hook sense of the term love. Like, you love them because you want, like, them to achieve the highest form of themselves, achieve, like, their spiritual well-being, just being happy, like, making sure that they are able to do that, like, what capacity you're able to offer them with emotional support and whatnot. Like, you're supposed to be that person, right?
Mhm.
That not just how we see, like, the 1950s couples that just got together, got married because it was just something to do. Like, this is something that
Yeah.
you're, like, seeking out to be your life partner.
Yeah. And like that's the problem too like with this where a lot of the times, like, it's saying, does Ren not, like, this person's review saying, does Ren not have enough money to take care of her husband? Even though Ren explicitly said to her husband, you can take time off for your art or whatever you want to do. I can support us. If you want to move to New York, if you want to move to Los Angeles, like, she very clearly stated that, like, with her job, it was flexible enough and her degree that she had that ability to make them comfortable and she wanted to because she knew she never had that comfortability with her mother beforehand, you know?
I don't maybe this is me coming from my perspective and what I know about it is but when people get sick and they can't really take care of themselves anymore, you lose a lot of things. You're losing your friendships and like when you work, right? As much labor is exploitative, no matter where you're at, right? Unless you're at like a worker cooperative and everything's distributed, like
Mhm.
majority of people are being exploited. But that's still a place you're going to, and you have community, you have friends, you have some sort of like solidarity. But when you get sick and something happens, a disabling event occurs, your world gets smaller,
Yes.
especially with his prognosis, which could be a stand in for anything that limits you to a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
He can no longer drive. He can he's losing his independence. So like him being able to work as long as he can is because he wants to. He wants to be
Yes.
an autonomous person.
And
I
he
don't That's why
Yeah.
where's the disconnect, Sean? Like, that's what happens. People are allowed to people work, and I think that's fine. Like, it's not a
Yeah.
bad thing to, like, wanna be around other people that aren't just your immediate partner, especially when that immediate partner and it takes on the caregiver and recipient relationship. It changes the dynamic a little bit, and it makes it hard. So, I can totally get, like, why somebody would wanna work through that.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously, like, hindsight's 2022, like, just because you have that opinion in your perspective, you've also never been in that situation too where you've had to decide, hey, should I quit my job and make it possibly harder on my wife for one, because she'll either have to put in more hours or make sure she has a higher responsibility because we really can't survive then if she loses her job too. How would we pay for this stuff? Whenever there's a reason why like so many people are like d- dependent on dual incomes for homes, rent, anything like of regular need basis. I mean, hell, barely you can afford to buy groceries anymore with just one income, you know? And so I cannot like no matter how like well paying Ren's job is, because we don't really know like how well it is, and it's not like they're described as living in a mansion or even like that large of a home or anything like that. Like they live in Dallas, which I'm assuming is still like it's a city, it's still expensive more than wherever. Like it's a one thing if you live in like the other parts of the world where you have free healthcare and stuff too, where they're probably having to pay a lot out of pocket for these appointments and things like that.
I just don't think people are getting that
No, I don't think
from
so either.
this. It's very interesting to see what people were able to extract. Some of the other, like, crits of it were not
And like I
as,
have my
like,
own
nuanced. I
crits
didn't
of
think
it
you would
too.
have. Oh, right, right, like, we did, like, we had a it mainly it fell into the latter parts of the books. Like, I thought it was really interesting
Hmm.
with the woman
The
who she was,
tiny
like, what,
pregnant
the
one.
swimmer? Tiny pregnant woman, doesn't have a name. It's not us being misogynistic, I swear to God, she
Yeah, that's
literally does
literally
not
her
have a name
character name is Tiny Pregnant Woman.
that I can remember. It was
Well, she
Tiny
does
Pregnant
get
Woman from the
named
beginning,
at that one part.
later,
Yeah,
but
in the
it's
obituary, but
so
it's
far
like,
gone, you're
yeah,
still like, "Okay."
Tiny Pregnant
Anyways, where
Woman.
it which I thought was, like, another, interesting level where there's a woman who's a stay-at-home mom, she's pregnant with twins. Oh, it's twin falcons, and
Yeah.
also, they're
Also, I
a
think those are
very
the fastest
high-risk
falcons.
pregnancy.
Like, they're the fastest animal in the world. I think the falcon specifically that she was gonna give birth to.
I'm very curious why she picked the different animals. I did not look into any, like,
Why?
synopsis on,
Yeah.
like, why that could be.
I
I'm just rolling with the
saw
punches with what I know.
something because somebody did ask the question in the back of the book to her because she has a Q&A section about why she picked the different animals. Like, or why she picked Lewis being a shark specifically.
Let
And
me turn my head. She says, "What? I gravitated towards provocative predatory animals because they complicate and raise the stakes. It would be a much different story if Lewis and Angela turned into poodles. The opportunity to explore danger as well as some circumstantial absurdity made the animal mutations so interesting and creatively satisfying to write."
there you go. That's why
Sorry, I
she
have
chose.
them copied and pasted into this document, and I did not format them. So, if I turn sideways, it's because 'cause I'm reading it. I thought that's pretty cool, like, why it's a predator.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think that's less of the issue because later in part 2, when we get to Angela's, I think Angela's transformation really resembles the transition through the different stages of dementia for me.
Yeah.
That's what I was able to extract, like, like, getting very agitated and aggressive and forgetting things that are very important. You can get it very early onset, which could be what happened to even though, like, Angela's story is so sad.
No, it
It
is
is
very
sad, but
sad.
it wasn't, like, gut-wrenching to
No.
me, like, where I was, like, tearing up or anything. I did not shed any tears. The first part of this book did get me a little
Yeah.
bit, but the second part, I did relate a lot to Angela, um, as a teen mom, hashtag teen mom. Um, I thought there was a really interesting, like, connections between how, like, our lives played out. I thought that was really nice. But then
Yeah.
her later on, she has this baby. It's her life's a shit show. and I feel bad for her because some of the decisions she made, but also some things that are thrust upon her. Some of it is like a product of the time because it's
Mm-hmm.
like the
80s.
1970s or 80s.
I think Ren is supposed to be born in like the late 70s, early 80s. I think.
Question mark. I'm not quite sure. There's not real clear time. You have to go based on like technology and like what they're doing, in my opinion. So that's besides the point. But um what was I gonna say? Her life, she's got like this well-off family and she's neglected, so she seeks out love where she can get it, and it's from an older man. She's definitely being groomed.
Yeah.
But because of the times, which I hate saying that, it feels very like,
It was okay
I don't
back
know.
then.
It was okay back then.
It
It
wasn't.
seemed to happen a lot
Yeah.
more. And it's not right in hindsight. Absolutely not. But
No.
she's what, 15 or 16 years old,
15
and
when
she's
she's pregnant.
seeking out this like older. He looks like he's in his 20s,
I would
early
think
20s,
early
in my
20s
opinion.
was what I was thinking too. Which is
But
still
it's a
too
big
old.
enough gap. Too old, too much. And then she ends up like falling pregnant, and then she tells her family the mom and the dad are getting a divorce,
And
so
they
she
don't
just like moves into
care.
his
They're like,
houseboat.
they're more,
Um,
yeah. And so
and it's
then,
all fucked up.
yeah.
Then it's like a domestic violence situation, and she ends up getting a job, and she ends up getting a lot of community from a black family. One of her best friend, Julia?
I
Question
thought they
mark. I think
were
that's
Native
right.
American.
Are they?
She said Chickasaw.
B.
That's what she
I don't
said, I'm
remember.
pretty sure. She said they were like Chickasaw family.
I know they were definitely not white.
No. Well,
That
I thought they were Native American, indigenous peoples. Yeah, it's Chickasaw. Page 239. It says Julia revealed she did not want to work at the motel forever. She would love to be a nurse if she didn't hate school so much. Ever since her girlhood friends turned on her in junior high, Julia had mistrusted women. She said her twin brother George was her best friend. Julia's family was Chickasaw, and no one left home unless they were in trouble with the law or crossed someone in a bad way.
okay. I stand incorrected.
So they're
Now we have
a
that
native,
up.
yes, a native family that in Oklahoma, which makes sense because that's like where
That
the
does. That makes a
Trail of
lot more
Tears
sense.
pushed all of the Native American peoples to.
But it makes sense because of
Yeah.
like their community and their family, the way they
Yes.
operate, they all take care of each other. Whereas we're seeing like this affluent white family, very individualistic, very much a part of like American culture and what it's like to grow up white. Not a lot of
Yes.
community, especially if you have like some sort of upwards mobility. I've seen it many a times, where these like rich kids will get addicted to drugs because that's just something that happens around here. And their families, I don't know. It's very weird. I've heard of it happening with other people too, whether I don't know. It seems like people have like houses and they're like, "Oh no, I was kicked out because of this reason." But that doesn't seem to happen in the like BIPOC community nearly as frequently,
No.
as it does with white
White
families. So I thought that was a
community.
really nice aspect. If somebody
Yeah.
is part of this and we are incorrect, feel free to comment and correct, but that's just
At
my
least
understanding.
the way that the Julia and her family were presented too, because you end up even having once Ren is born, Julia's mother starts watching Ren whenever Angela has to go to work every day and stuff like that. So they obviously have like some very community, like they were taking her in and they were like, we don't want you to go back there, we want you to be here with us, besides the fact that George was in love with Angela as well, obviously. But
Which that was a really sad, like
yeah,
a love that could never be. Just they are
well,
really hit the head on
it was really
the nail
sad
on the
too.
head with
Like
this.
George is such a nice guy, he deserved better. But I can also, like, you can also understand like Angela's decisions too, because I can only imagine being in that situation. You almost would probably feel like a burden upon, like, especially like whenever you're raised like the way, like, she's raised in a white family, very individualistic, not relying on anyone else. You just kind of like, your problems are your problems. You see that with the way that her mom is and the way that her dad is. They don't talk about things as a family. They don't communicate with each other. And so the fact that she was raised that way and then like thrusted into this other family that are trying to get her to be more open, trying to help her, trying to teach her, and she just can't open up in that way because that's not something she was ever done. And then unfortunately it ends up being the same way with her and Ren because of the way that her diagnosis is too. But it seems like in the ending Ren is able to teach her child a new way.
Which is all you can ever ask, right? Is that you
Mhm.
learn from your lived experiences, and you can see that it seems as though at least Angela was better off than her mom in some ways, because her mom
Yes.
was in a loveless relationship. It seemed she was like a drunkard, right? She was
Yeah.
drunk, always yelling and
An
whatnot.
alcoholic, as regular people would say. Not a
Yeah.
drunkard.
Yeah, she suffered from alcoholism, I apologize.
um,
Um
yeah. And then even one thing about, like, with Ren's character, her ending up being, like, queer as well was a very nice, like, subtle touch to it as well, because you basically learn, like, back in college, she kind of got with her old teacher, like, after she finished the class, guys, don't be weird. Um, which I thought was just, like, a nice thing too, because I thought her relationship with Rachel was very sweet as well, because it shows that she learned a lot from it too, because, like, whenever Rachel was like, I know you deserve to be loved. You just need to know that you deserve to be loved. And then she ends up finding Lewis and she gets, well, we know how that ends, but they
Rest in
get
peace,
happy
Lewis.
they're happy for some time. But I think those are the strongest parts of the novel, but once we get to like there's like a random part 3 with Lewis and then Margaret C something. I don't remember what her name is.
Yeah, I did not like part 3. I did not think it was applicable to the story. It made it feel like an anthology, and that was where my rating fell off because I just didn't understand why that was in there. But the other parts and like the way it's structured are so interesting that I think it almost makes up for it. At least I
Yeah.
honestly think you could just get away with reading the first part of this book. I don't even think you need to read the rest of it. I
Well,
don't. You
I don't know.
could
I
like
think the
the second
second
part
part
is
is just so
okay.
good.
But it does feel disjointed at that point,
Yeah.
is why are we telling this? Because the symbolism was
Like he's
like,
gone.
that's death. He's
Like he's
supposed to
gone.
be
Yeah.
moved on, and I didn't like that. Because we don't know what it's like to die.
Yeah. Not me
So
personally yet.
why n Kristen.
Soon.
Um,
Just kidding.
you have
um
to outlive Mitch McConnell. You can't
okay, I don't have that
that's
much
your
longer
goal.
then.
What was I
Anyways,
gonna fuck, I lost my
sorry.
train of thought.
You were talking about
Um
Lewis's part 3.
I didn't like it, and I don't know. There was like, oh, another little girl. She was 12 years old, and she got the same thing. And she was, I don't know. I don't know what the utility. I was
I
under the
don't
impression the entire time that turning into the animal was dying, but then it kind of pokes holes into that narrative that it's not dying. They're just doing something else. So I don't know if
they
that's
just
for
live
like
in
the
the ocean.
spirituality, for like, oh, it's just a big ocean. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
Very
don't know
weird.
because like I kind of like I felt bad for like Margaret too because like the fact like even though she was 24 or whatever, she was still like a little girl. Like she was still like a early teen, preteen girl. And you could tell by the way she talked, the way she acted. She was just very young. And like I don't know if that means like once you get hit with this you don't even age. Like no maturity is there or anything like that because we know she got thrusted into the ocean while she was very young because she had to get raised by dolphins. So,
I just
like,
think it was
her
not
family
necessary.
abandoned her that quick?
If I was the editor of this book, I'm like, kick this shit out, get rid of it.
It
I
wasn't
really
even
did
very
not like it.
long either, like a very long section.
I was wondering where it was gonna go, and it's like, oh, we're gonna start a little village on
Shark
the coast of
commune.
Shark Commune. But then it goes back, like you get the bonus chapter or epilogue of Ren and her daughter, and
Which I thought was sweet.
it's cute, which I think was
Yeah.
fine. That was fine.
I
Get
just
rid of part 3.
yeah. I think that's kind of where it all felt like it ended up falling apart for me, but I think other than that, like the story is very engaging, very realistic feeling. I even liked like the way the ending was. Like I think the ending ended up pulling on your heartstrings too because it's almost like a letter to Lewis at the end too, where she's like talking about their daughter and everything like that. Which I don't know how realistic because I almost feel like with the way that like Lewis turning into a shark almost feels more like Cancer-esque because they're still so young, and even with Margaret turning into a shark so young, like leukemia or something like that sort of idea is what I was thinking.
That's what I was picking up on too.
Versus like turning into like the Komodo dragon, it was a much longer period of time they had for her mother, but it was like felt more like dementia, early onset Alzheimer's sort of thing to me personally, which is like fine, but then it's also like because there is also like the moralness of it too, because the idea is that it's like generational too, so like her kid's gonna be extra fucked, basically.
I don't know. I honestly I don't know if it needed to be in there because at that point I feel like you'd already like
We get it.
gone through it. Like we get what the story's about, but it just like keeps going, and I think it should have just ended. And I like when an ending is a little bit more open ended with something of this nature
Yeah.
because you can't flush out all the details.
But the problem is too is that if you leave it too open ended, then people are like, "There's no point to this book."
This is also true.
But
What
overall,
else?
it's very good. I think. I
It's
think this
good.
part 3. There was a little bit of jab to neoliberalism within it, which is pretty nice too. Which not that Emily Habeck has her political opinions much online, but I do think that she definitely seems at least somewhat lefter than a regular old Democrat, I would say.
But what we're able to extract from this
Yeah.
story, I thought was an interesting exploration of not just like grief and love. You get to explore like misogyny
Mhm.
and what it means to like be in different relationships, and also the way that we're socialized that you need to work really hard to do certain things like meritocracy. These nice light crits of neoliberalism, systemic social oppression are relevant throughout the story.
Mhm.
But also I thought there was like a a slight mention of like the crit of what is Angela's baby daddy's name? I can't remember, where he like crashes out on
Marcos?
her on Christmas. Yes, and he
Yeah.
says, "I don't support the capitalist construction of Jesus Christ, you know this." And he goes and lives in a commune, and
Yeah. He's almost like
well,
one of your like it
that
reminds me of what's his face from Severance kind of. The dude.
yes.
I don't remember his name.
Yes.
Sorry.
Where the escapism from
Yeah.
society type, where they have, but they don't actually that doesn't make any sense, like to be anti-capitalist but then to not actually unpack all of the other forms of oppression that you're perpetuating.
Yes.
You're like a woman beater, and but
Yeah.
you want to capitalist construction of Jesus Christ is the biggest thing on your fucking
Is
mind.
that's where you draw your line in the sand? Maybe you should take a few steps back from that line first before you walk up to that line, buddy. Because what do you
It's
know?
giving like the what, I can excuse racism, but I draw the
Like,
line
line.
at animal
Yeah.
cruelty.
Yeah.
Like, that type of shit. Like,
Like
the
the
2
fake
things can happen at the
activists.
same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I thought that was interesting, but that's all we have to go off of. So, I'm very curious, whenever there's another novel that gets put out what the politics will be. I'm sure that Chris and I will read them, and hopefully they will be similar to this. I would like it to be a little bit better, but this is still really good, and I'm going to recommend it to my coworkers and whatnot because we do work in an industry where people are constantly dying because it's just geriatrics.
I think this is
And I thought it was
something you
nice.
can recommend to, like, even, like, a loved one. Like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like this is something that shows, like, the complexities of love, because also, too, like, love is not just, like, this straight path everyone is down. There's twists and turns, and sometimes you're going backwards, sometimes you're going forward. It's all a journey, not to sound corny, but it really is, and I think this does a good job at, like, humbling you and reminding you. Maybe it also, I think it's also, like, one of those things that makes you cherish what you have in the moment when normally you're not paying attention to those things that you should be cherishing. But
Period.
yeah, I think it
That's
is a really sweet book. Like, it's just one of those. It really does pull on your heartstrings, sort of
it's a
thing.
book where magical realism is done really well. And
Yeah, it feels
I
really
liked it.
natural. Yeah, I think it's a very good book. Not necessarily best book of the year,
But for a lit fic and what it was
but
trying to do, we've just read so many bad lit fic.
this probably
That
would be the best lit fic I've read, personally. I don't know about you.
I liked it a lot. I need to go through, make a list of all the lit fic that I've read and what I rate it and
Yeah.
why. Because I need to like get into it. There
You
has
need
to
to make, like,
be
a lit
a method.
list, like, lit fic for people that don't like lit fic, maybe? Like, you know what I'm saying? To get people to
Yeah,
see
like if
things.
you didn't like this piece of like lit fic, try this one or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. I got to read more though to get into
This,
it. But
I think if you like, also, this is, like, a recommendation. If you like the episode Common People, Black Mirror, season 7 that just came out, this is, like, very much that. I think, like, similar, less science fiction-y, obviously, but, like, still within the same realm of that. So that's my recommendation in that way. If you like that episode of Common People, you would like this. Or if you know somebody that likes that episode of Black Mirror, I know there's a lot of discourse on it right now online, which a lot of it is stupid. Can't talk about it though because Mariah hasn't watched it. So,
I'm saving it for when I get my wisdom teeth taken out.
well,
I'm going to watch them all.
we only have one more episode to watch, and it's the sequel to the USS Callister episode or whatever. Which because I haven't seen the
It
first.
recycles a character, right? From the not I want to say Jabberwocky. It's not that. What is it
I
called? Like
haven't
the one
seen
where it
the
was like the
original
choose your
episode.
own. No.
No,
There is like the
Bandersnatch.
choose Bandersnatch. It
No, no,
recycles.
no,
He's
no,
in it,
no, no,
right?
not in that one. Not in that one. That's a
Oh,
different
okay.
episode.
I thought I
But
saw his face on one of the titles.
he's not that relevant, like, in the
Okay.
episode. Like, it's not like, it's just like more of like almost like a cameo kind of thing, I'd say. Than it is like that's the focus. But yeah, okay. Well, other than that, next week's episode will be My Dark Vanessa by
Over here. Kate Elizabeth Russell, which
Okay, Kate.
I think is gonna do really well. So keep an eye out for Selena. It's gonna be up, and I have a lot of ideas for it. I think it'll be fun.
I haven't even started it yet, so we'll see. Other than that, don't forget to join the book club, Lit Pod on Fable. We are reading over Haven, which will be the last episode for this month. But other than that, thank you and good night.